Good evening, everybody. My name is Alex Marsh. I'm the chair of the Housing Management Board, the independent chair, and welcome to our October meeting. So we should start with just a bit of housekeeping. The meeting is being recorded. Also, just to note, it's governed by the relevant codes of conduct, and questions come through the chair. So and obviously being on Zoom, it requires a bit of management like that. So just in terms of process, we've got a number of people here today who are either observing or welcome, particularly Ben Hanrath, who's joining this committee. He's acting as the representative for the leaseholders today. He's joined alongside Richard Goulding, who's unable to make it, and I think they'll share that role as leaseholder rep. The other thing to say is, and just for people's information, this is a board which is inviting tenant and leaseholder representatives to engage with the council's strategies, proposals, the various items, but it's also an opportunity for councillors, some of whom maybe aren't as closely engaged with the housing side of things, to ask questions or raise comments as well. So I mean, there are a number of councillors who are members of this committee, and they are not simply here to observe. It is also as part of that process of engagement with the council's housing function. So that's the sort of game plan. So I suggest we just run around the screen so that everybody is familiar with who else is in the room virtually. We just heard from Tom, so we'll take Tom as already having introduced himself. So if I come round my screen, Leisha, please.
Good evening, everyone. I am Leisha Wilson, Policy and Engagement Manager for Housing and Landlord Services.
And I've got Christine.
Hi, hi. I'm Christine Jory, a tenant at Redfield, St George.
And then I've got Tim.
Yeah, hi, my name's Tim Delarue. I represent Housing Scrutiny Panel here tonight.
Fantastic, thank you. I've got Alona.
Hi, my name is Ilona Marciniak, and I'm part of the tenant participation team. I work as a tenant participation project officer.
Thank you very much, welcome. I've got Councillor Denyer, who may be in a position to speak or not.
Hello, yes, Councillor Carla Denyer, Green Party Councillor for Clifton Down Ward.
Thank you very much. And I've got thank you. And I've got Craig.
Hi all, nice to see you. Craig Cook, Head of Repairs and Maintenance.
Thank you very much. I've got Nigel.
Nigel Farley, tenant at Gilton House in Brislington.
Fantastic. Then I've got Ben.
Hi guys, I am Ben. I'm the Deputy Leaseholder Representative, I think, rather than co, but I hear that the other person can't make it.
Well, you're very welcome. Richard James.
Hi, I'm Richard James, so I'm the Interim Head of Business Development, and I'm here today to give you an update on the Housing Revenue Account. This is my first meeting.
Welcome. I've got David Max.
Hi there, I'm same role as Alona, as a Tenant Participation Officer. I'm just here as an observer tonight.
Fantastic, thanks, welcome. And I've got Pete Dorr.
Hey, I'm Pete Dorr. I'm a tenant in Bristol Northwest and the Deputy Board. And can I just apologise? I will be sucking on an oxygen mask occasionally through the meeting. You catch me not in great health. Thank you.
Oh dear. Well, sorry to hear that, Pete, and no need to apologise. And I was about to introduce Liz Cheetham, but she's disappeared again. So she may return. So I've got Sibyl Ciso.
Hi, Sibyl Ciso. I'm a tenant representative from Potwell.
Fantastic, thank you, welcome. And then Liz, if you are able to introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, hi. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Cheetham. I'm the Engagement Team Leader in Housing and Landlord Services. Thank you.
Fantastic, thanks very much. Okay, so that's who we are.
And sorry, also just me, Jeremy Livitt. I'm Clark from Democratic Services. I'm Clark in meeting.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. And would you just, for the record, remind us of the apologies?
Yes, apologies you've had from Alistair Goulding, Councillor Sarah Classic, and Councillor Richard Eddy. Those are the formal apologies I've had. So yeah.
Thanks very much. So next item is the minutes of our last meeting, and there are plenty of actions to flow from that. So we'll take it in 2 stages. For those of us who were present at that meeting, which is this meeting of the 10th of July, are there any matters of accuracy or things that are that you'd like to query firstly, or are we content that that is an accurate record of the meeting? The people who were there, I'm seeing nods, and I think we're okay in terms of the accuracy. Fantastic, thanks for that. So this just one. Oh.
Sorry, Chair. Just wanted to check. I saw that Tom hadn't responded back about the social value. Just wanted to confirm to you that I've resolved that matter myself. The second one was, I saw, was it Tim Delarue was selected as the rep for the Housing Management Board? Is that correct?
Tim is here, and he's the representative of the scrutiny panel to us, I think. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I think. Yes, but because another member was it Peter?
Yeah, Pete's here as well.
Resigned. Yeah. So when Peter resigned, and he was the member to the housing board, then it was nominated that Mr. Delarue will be the representative to that housing board. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. Peter Edwards.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's not Peter Dorr, it's Peter Edwards, who was who was a previous member of this.
That's correct. Yeah.
Committee. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So who is now the representative in that board?
On the Housing Management Board?
Yes. No, sorry, not on the Housing Management Board. Is it the Housing Board?
Oh, Alex, shall I answer that one?
Yeah, please do.
So we have a housing scrutiny panel, which is part of our formal structure, and the scrutiny panel sends an associate member to the board, and that was Peter Edwards. Peter stood down, and the housing scrutiny panel has sent along another volunteer, which is Tim, who's here tonight.
Okay. Thank you. And Leisha, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry. Peter had asked a question, and obviously because he's resigned, I haven't seen any answers to his previous question in the last meeting, and that was what's going on with the housing board, because there hasn't been any minutes noted when you look at the council's website about any decisions that are being made through the housing board.
Do you mean the Homes and Communities Board?
Sorry, yes, that was me.
Well, right.
No. Yeah.
Sorry. The Homes and Communities Board is part of one city plan. I mean, the board that's above this Housing Management Board, there's another board above it. Even in the diagram that was sent to us as part of the review, there's another board above. So that board hasn't met since 2021, according to the council minutes.
So that's Homes and Communities Board.
Alex, can I take that?
I've got 4 people who want to take it, I think. Hang on a minute. I think Leisha was first.
I think Tom's probably going to say what I was going to say, because I think I was just going to make a correction. I think Super Suse is on about the Bristol Homes Board, which is the Homes and Communities Board, which Mr. Dorr was a representative of, and asked at the last meeting what's happening with that board. Hasn't met for a while. What's happening in terms of our representation on that board? So I think Tom's going to probably follow up with that. So I'll let Tom answer.
So can we pause at this moment, just very briefly? I started by saying, so the point was issues of accuracy. We're okay with issues of accuracy by the sound of it. Now we're going to go through actions from the last meeting and just pick up on some of those. As it happens, the first action is precisely this one, which is Councillor Reynard to take further action as required around the Homes and Communities Board. So if interested in terms of process, we can move on to the actions. Councillor Reynard, who's joined us, do you want to just respond to Siba Cisse's raising that issue?
Yeah, it hasn't met in over a year formally. It's due to meet in November. Housing Management Board, we're going to be talking about tenant involvement structures later, but just needs to reconfirm who its representative is going to be. But it's Housing Management Board has still very much got a representative on it. That's
Okay.
not in question.
Okay, so it's I got Pete, I got you. So in terms of substance, things haven't changed in terms of there's been no meeting since last we met of that board, but there's one coming up. And Pete Dawes, do you want to come in at that point?
Yes, I do, Alex, and so I'm at a slight disadvantage tonight in the sense that the papers for this meeting weren't sent to me. So I had the opportunity to read the minutes of the last meeting, or indeed the agenda for tonight. The reason I brought up at the last meeting of this board the fact that the Homes and Communities hadn't met for a third time, I might say, of my bringing it to this board's attention, is that since my appointment in 2021 to represent the 27,500 families who are served by landlord services, the Homes and Communities Board have not invited me to it, not once. Now, I did take a side and ask, has the board met recently? And was told that wasn't the case. There was a suggestion made to me by a councillor that the move towards the new structures of governance that succeed the mayoral structure mean that the board might not meet again. However, it remains the case that I have never been invited to a meeting of the Homes and Communities Board since being elected by this board to represent the tenants on it since 2021. And it is my third time of bringing it to this board's attention because I have some issues. I have some, I don't know, I feel it is deficient of the Homes and Communities Board. I know that our tenant management team, I know that Tom are doing a piece of work to look at the structures of tenant representation. But like yourself, Professor Marsh, as a fellow of the Institute of Housing, I do take my role on this board very seriously, and I would want to be in the room with the Homes and Communities Board and have not been allowed to be so.
Okay, your point is made. Tom, Reynard, did you want to come back on that one?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, so since the last meeting, the Housing Management Board, it hasn't met, so nothing's kind of changed in that regard. But as I said, there's a meeting in November, and Pete will make sure the date's sent to you. So you know, and I'll personally make sure that does happen. And that'll be the first time the board formally has met in well over a year, because of the changes that we've had at the city office and everything else. So
okay,
I'll follow that.
Okay, so that's something which we may hear about when we meet again in this forum. Okay, so thanks for raising that one. So let's move on. So you mentioned that the Tom's issue is the social value assessment has been resolved outside of this meeting, I think.
Yes, and Gorham Holmes team had done a presentation on one of the other committees, so that matter was solved there. However, subsequently, it was raised that the social value that the city has collected up to date has been to a value of £6 million. Now, to be worth understanding, how does that £6 million break down in terms of the skills and everything else around housing, and because it's mainly around development and housing.
Okay, yeah. So is just to be clear, on that one, you're suggesting there's a piece of work to be done to clarify in more detail or disaggregate the contribution, is that right? Just to work out which bits
to
right.
better understand that impact of 6 million. You know, is it apprenticeships? Is it time spent? What is that value? Because that's a good level of contribution. So let's get a clear picture of it.
Okay, so we can take the action as is in the minutes is now settled, but there's an invitation there to our colleagues at the council to maybe think about whether there's a further benefit in exploring the contribution from housing. And I'd had a comment in the chat, which was the conversation we just finished was about the Homes and Communities Board, that meeting rather than this meeting. So it's the sort of superior body to this one, which hasn't met, but will be meeting in November. So just to make sure that's clear from the point of view of the minutes. Can we move on to the fire safety update? Now, from last time around, we had a discussion about fire safety, plenty of actions, quite a few of them fell to you. Leisha, I think. So we had issues around lessons learned around polystyrene. I'm not sure. Do you want to pick up on that one? You got, and I don't know whether you can speak on behalf of Alison Napper and Donald Graham. So there's a set of colleagues on the officer side who are taking up various actions. Leisha, are you in a position to run through where we are with all of those, or one of your colleagues? I'm not quite sure how who's best placed to deal with it.
I can certainly give you a bit of an update around that. I think one of the actions was about the mess created by polystyrene when the cladding is being removed. I think that's raised by Mr. Varley, and that was passed on to the project team in terms of sort of them taking that comment on board and taking that feedback on board as we move forward with removing cladding. There was also a query about fire doors, I believe, and fire doors being left open and the Wake and Watch team not necessarily being as vigilant, but making sure those doors are kept closed as their fire doors. What I can say about that is that there have been, we have made contact with Triton and Kingdom as our Wake and Watch providers. Information is included in the training for the Wake and Watch team, and they've all been instructed to carry out a toolbox talks across all the teams to make sure that all of their representatives know what to do around, you know, the closure of fire doors, keeping them closed, and reminding residents to keep them closed as well.
Okay, and the action was including in the newsletter for all residents in high-rise blocks. Is that something that's in hand?
Yes, so there is a newsletter. We're just waiting for it to be finalised through our external comms team, and that should be going out later this year.
Okay, thanks very much. Nigel, did you want to come in on that particular point?
Yeah, just about the polystyrene, really.
Okay.
It's too late to do anything about the Gilton House situation, but it's important for the other blocks that are going to get done in the next 10 years. And I think what is required is clear instructions or criteria laid down in the contract to the people who remove it as to how they remove it and what they do to it. And also monitoring of that by council officers to make sure that they're abiding by the contractual obligations. I was wondering if a set of instructions for contractors can be drawn up and given to this meeting, because it was a very serious situation for people living in a wide area of Brislington. I think the Brislington Council has got quite a few complaints about it. So I think that's important that that's done and we're very clear on it.
Okay, point taken. Can I ask you to take that away to the relevant
colleague? Could I give a brief update as well?
Of course, please do. Come in, Craig. Yes. Yeah,
so completely right there. As a result of the Gilton House cladding removal, there is some wording in the contracts about how we recycle and dispose of the old cladding systems. However, it wasn't prescriptive enough. As a result of the cladding removal, there has been a new process that's been included and will be included in all future contracts. So we can share that process with the group in the minutes after, but it's around very specific and prescriptive guidance about how they remove the cladding, how they remove it and in pairs, and it's to be bagged with big bags at the time and netted and taken down to skips. They're also netted. So the control of any debris as removed is absolutely minimized as much as possible. It's something that has been implemented as a lessons learned and will be implemented across other projects as we go forward.
Okay, thanks for that additional information. Can anybody take the next item, which is the mobility scooter issue and the battery safety? And Donald was going to report on that, but I don't know if anybody else is able to report back on where we are with that.
So I can give a brief update, not very detailed, but I can certainly say we are still working on our mobility scooter policy and taking steps to look at how we can implement that safely, how we can work with residents to make sure we keep our safe escape routes clear. But there's quite a bit of work to do on that, and but that work is in hand, and the feedback from the board has been shared with our policy team so they know what the concerns are from the residents on this board.
So before Nigel comes in, just on timescales, can we just, by the time this board meets again, would you expect that to be available and in place and available? I mean, is that the sort of timescale we're talking?
I would hope so, yeah.
Right, yeah. Okay. Nigel, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I'm sorry to come in again. I'm acutely aware that I talk too much in these meetings, but anyway. it's a question of timing and the creation of the charging rooms, because we were promised a charging room at Gilton House months and months ago, and a room was cleared for it to be installed, but nothing's happening. And the people with mobility scooters in here are quite concerned. And there are all sorts of other issues about that. If you're going to have charging rooms, you've got to provide people with a means of opening doors with the remote controls, because they can't open the doors in and out on their own. So it's quite an urgent matter. And I don't understand why the delay is in installing the charging rooms, given the danger, of course, of charging mobility scooters on landings, which is what's happening at the moment.
Okay, so do we? I'm not sure whether anybody is in a position to respond to that now, or whether that's something I think we might invite colleagues to take. Craig, do you want to come in, or?
Yeah, I think we'll only just echo some of what Leisha said and to acknowledge, yeah, that's a bigger issue for us to take away and provide a much more structured, coherent response, because it's a citywide issue that we need to make sure we address and consider all of the equalities impacts of any decision taken as well, because it's very complex when you start pulling back the plaster on this issue.
Okay, I mean, I think if can I suggest, given that this exercise colleagues last time around as well, and it is a matter of, obviously it's a significant matter of safety, that if as and when that is available, it's circulated to the board for information, rather than necessarily hold it over till the next meeting, if you like. If things move forward and there's an action plan or whatever in place to address it earlier than that, then maybe circulate to colleagues so there's some assurance that things are moving forward. Councillor Reynard, Tom.
Thank you, Alex. I think just to pick on a couple of Mr. Varley's concerns, there's obviously something really specific at Gilton House, Mr. Varley, that I'll pick up with the team.
No, I don't think it is specific to Gilton House. I think it's a general issue.
I was going to come on to that. If that's,
sorry.
If that's okay. I can just
yeah, sorry.
Thank you. So I think there's a specific point that I heard you raise in relation to your block, but in terms of the wider point, obviously what we need to also look at is around investment in the planning programme for the availability of mobility scooter storage across our blocks, which is something that we will look at within the business plan that's currently the 30-year business plan is currently going through its review as we update our budgets. So you have that assurance that will be picked up and looked at in the round. But then just finally, there is a safe escapes routes policy in place. I just wanted to make sure that was really clearly noted, because there is one in place and it was signed off a number of months ago by me at one of my cabinet member briefings, and there is some existing guidance in place around mobility scooters, but what we're now doing is having a further look at that in response to what's been fed back, I think, at this board, but also at the recent housing forums as well.
Thank you. Leisha, there was a specific action about requests. I don't know if that's been dealt with for investment. So this was, again, Nigel raised this issue of whether you needed to make another request for investment in communal areas, etc. Because one had been made and it wasn't sure whether the system had registered it, and whether you needed to make another one, I think was the point. Anyway, can I leave that?
Yeah, can you leave that with me? I don't have an update for that one here, but
can you take that offline as a conversation with Nigel specifically about what's happening there on that one?
I will do. I'll get in touch with you, Nigel.
And our next comment is something which Pete raised about. Again, it's about disposal, removal of furniture, clearing of the site. Pete Dole raised that last time around. I don't know whether you've received anything from Alison Scott about that, Pete.
I haven't, Professor Marsh. No.
Okay.
I will see whether she responds ahead of the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll keep that one as an open action to see if we can close that by next time around. And then Leisha, something about City Leap, which was raised last time around. That's our last.
Yeah, I do have a response. I'm not very familiar with the topic, so can I put the response in with the minutes of the meeting so that everyone can read it and understand it? Because I don't want to talk on a topic that I'm less familiar with. But I do have a response from the team. Okay, well that's good. Yeah, no, take it that way. So if we move on to damp and mold was our next item last time around. And there are a couple of actions there. So this is incidents of painting over damp and mold reported by Philip.
was the key thing I think that came up last time. So I don't know if that's been taken. It was Alison that was going to take it, but I don't know whether we know where we are with that.
Yeah, so that action point is now closed. The resident in question has been contacted and Mr. Morris has been updated. I emailed him today.
Fantastic, good. And then we're down to, we're coming through CCTV, we're coming through energy efficiency. Sam Robinson to report back on progress around energy efficiency, district heating systems and new build. There wasn't a timescale for that report. Do we have an indication of when that will be available?
I don't have that at the moment. I'll have to go back and ask Sam for that.
Yeah. So I mean, let's just clarify when we might expect that. That'd be great. And I've got a comment in the chat. Laundry room still not repaired, functioning in. So Civil has raised a question about Tyndall House. Can somebody? I'm sure somebody will capture that and take it away. Is that okay?
I was halfway through typing the message back about it. It's actually reopened today, thankfully.
Okay.
But I'll finish the message with some further dates, and then you can.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And then, resident satisfaction survey to come to this meeting.
Hang on.
Oh,
can we go back to this? Sorry, to the energy efficiency. There's a point about the removal of cladding and during cold weather. I mean, I want to raise the whole issue sometime in this meeting. Is this an appropriate time to do it, or shall we wait till further down on the agenda? Because it is a huge issue.
It depends. There isn't. I'm not sure there's an agenda item.
There is. There's the whole thing about residential building safety.
Oh, okay. You want to take it? Well, yes. If it relates to that, let's take it then. Yes, for sure. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Otherwise, I think Fiona Lester noted the concerns raised by board members about the difficulty of contacting the leaseholder team, and to pursue that. Leisha, have we got an update on where we are with that? Welcome, Philip, by the way.
Yeah, just a quick update on that one. The leaseholder team now have a duty team on call to take telephone calls from leaseholders. And so they've got a rota in place where leaseholders can contact the team directly. So hopefully that will be much more quicker for residents to get through to the team.
Okay, so Ben, did you want to come in at that point? Or if not, then keep an eye out. If you pick up any feedback on that, then please feed it back.
I will do. It was one of the big things I think in the last leaseholder forum, so it's great if there's a better contact point.
Fantastic. Okay, good. So yeah, keep us up to date if there's any feedback. So in terms of our agenda for today, the next item is the public forum, and as I understand it, we don't have any questions submitted or representations. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
So fantastic. So let's move on to item 4, which is the building safety engagement strategy. So I think Craig, you're going to take this one, and we'll leave space for Nigel to come in with his comment once you've made your presentation. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So just for the avoidance of doubt, this is more around the Building Safety Act and the need to, and some of the reasons around and how we need to be compliant and what that means, rather than the resident engagement strategy part of that. Okay, let me just grab up the presentation.
Just to say, when Craig's finished, I'll cover off the resident engagement side. So we're doing a bit of a double act today.
Thank you, Lisha. Right. It should be coming through.
It's coming through now. Yeah, we're there.
Great. See if I can open you guys up so I can see a few more of you. Okay, I cannot really see any of you. So if there is any questions and you feel it's important, just please shout, or we can save some questions to the end and then we drag that away. Okay, so as you said then, today I'm going to present to you about an update on building safety, what that means for the organisation, what that means for residents, both in a legislative way and in a safety context. Hopefully it should capture and provoke some questions with you. So come on through, there we go. So some of this might be a little bit wordy, so apologies there. I will leave it on the screen for you to read as I talk it through. So you'll see then that the Building Safety Act has been introduced in 2022, and this is as a result of really linked to Grenfell and Dame Hackett's review and what the sector needed to do as a result of some of the tragic loss in Grenfell and the improved safety standards as a result. So some really, really reassuring work and ownership created in the sector for landlords such as ourselves. So as you can see, the Act requires all buildings in scope of the new or more stringent regulatory regime to be registered with the Building Safety Regulator. So what does that mean and what falls into scope? So the building defined as any residential building measuring 18 meters and above or 7 stories or higher with 2 or more residential buildings. So you could argue, or a very clear definition, that multi-occupancy blocks over a certain height. So Bristol's got 62 existing high-rise buildings, but 57 are in scope that need to be registered. So we've only got 57 in scope because 5 of the interconnecting buildings can be registered as one overall registration. So we need to split that into 3 stages under the regulatory requirements. So stage 1 would be registering all of our high-risk buildings by the 30th of September 2023, which means collecting some basic information, which we can go on to in a minute. Stage 2 then, collecting key building information, so a little bit more in detail, which needs to be submitted to the regulator within 28 days. So as you can see, no later than the 5th of November. And stage 3 then, submit building safety cases by the 1st of April 2024. We'll come on to what a building safety case is in a minute. Okay, so first stage then we'll talk that through. So each building will be prescribed a unique reference number, as you can see, with the Building Safety Regulator. And we needed to register all of our buildings by the 30th of September 2023. Really reassuringly, I'm glad to say that we have managed to register all buildings within that timescale. So what that means now then is that the regulator can start building a picture in the sector about all of the high-risk buildings nationally. And coming on to the, actually, no, let's save that. I don't want to get ahead of myself. It's part of in the slides. So what is the next stage then? So stage 2, the key building information. Again, slightly wordy, but bear with me. So the initial registration sector is done. Part of the initial registration is the organisation appoints an accountable person, as well as the accountability entity, which is obviously BCC. So the accountable person, being John Smith, our exec director, is responsible for submitting the structure and safety information within 28 days of the application registration, and of which the accountable person can nominate and delegate some of that authority through its officers, but they remain the accountable person as per the title. So some of the information that we need to submit then is the structure of the building, fire protection and detection, and that can be a whole host of things about compartmentation, which can be made up from fire doors, the compartmentation within flats, and some of the detection, so your fire and smoke systems that are within dwellings and also in communal spaces. Type of cladding that your building has, and that can be picked up through different assessments now, such as fire risk assessments of the external wall. Some of you might colloquially know that as a PAS 9980 assessments that we've carried out and are carrying out on some of the blocks. And then some other materials that a building is made of, as you can see then, could be roofing materials, when the work has taken place, how it was constructed, new windows, roofs, and wiring and things like that. So one of the key elements of the Building Safety Act as well is about data, and the golden thread of data that you might have heard when we've talked about this subject before, and that any element of a refurbishment of a building needs to be recorded in a single version of the truth, so you can see the history of a building and the repairs that have continued. So Phil, did you want to ask something now, or do you want to save until the end?
I was going to wait to the end, but if I can, because you said fire protection and detection. In June 2022, under the Freedom of Information Act, I found that our housing officer inspected the building. It's the only time our little estate has been inspected. Under the comments, she states the fourth floor, the fire door not shutting properly. Laundry room, the fire door not shutting. Ground floor, 2 of the lights didn't work. Now, she doesn't the housing officer, he, she, doesn't say whether it's Birchall, Northfield, or Maudley. But the only thing is, regarding the 4th floor, it can't be Maudley because we're only 3 floors high. But has this, I've sent an email to David because I've been in hospital all day, so I got a bit confused. I thought the meeting was tomorrow. But I just want to know if this has been rectified, and if so, when?
So that's a really good point, and something that's picked up on in the Building Safety Act about making landlords more accountable for these sorts of actions, and creating an obligation to make sure that we inform residents of these types of repairs, and also giving timelines about when we would do remedial actions as a result of either reported repairs from various sources or as a result of defects highlighted on the fire risk assessment required under law. So it's something that we are looking to make sure that we can be much more data led, and that we can have much more visibility in how we can follow those actions. So every building has to have a fire risk assessment. Dependent on the type of building, the height, the story, the priority depends on when the fire risk assessment would be due. For a high-rise building, that's annually, and those defects are monitored and audited by officers in Bristol City Council. So on a strategic view, then that is where we would manage and action repairs across buildings such as fire doors that's been highlighted there. But on a more real basic view, because we know that now, we'll make sure that we follow up on that and investigate that as a very specific incident across the blocks at your app, because I'm not sure which ones they are. Okay, right, so.
Okay, so there's a specific action to take away there in relation to the issue that Philip identifies, right? Okay, so but it sounds like the system that's coming into place would not just capture some of these problems, but oblige the council to inform
absolutely
when things have been dealt with. Okay.
And yeah, and there's always been fire risk assessments carried out, and there's been repairs remediated as a result of that. But the Building Safety Act then puts a lot more onus and obligation on landlords in law to make sure that this has happened and visible and accountable. So it's a really positive step forward. So last line on this slide, as you can see, then the teams have worked very hard to provide this information, and we've submitted the key building information ahead of schedule and ahead of deadline. So yeah, this was a very big task, but reassuringly and positively, we've achieved phase 2. Okay. So building safety cases, this one's very wordy, apologies. So I will paraphrase this one for those that can't see it as well. So what is a building safety case is the key element of it. So by April 2024, the owners of buildings need to submit a building safety case. And the building safety case is effectively a report on each building to make an argument supported by evidence of the building that Bristol City Council or any landlord have taken all reasonable steps to manage building safety risks. So all buildings will carry inherent risk. The building safety case will never say that the building is without risk. It's about how you can manage those building safety risks in a safe manner and consider all things that could be elements of such buildings and the priority risk of those, as well as the tenure of the building. So as you can see on the 4th bullet point down there, failing to submit the building safety case is a criminal offence under the Building Safety Act, and therefore high-rise residential safety managers must meet all these requirements, and they carry criminal prosecution for accountable persons if these aren't submitted, and even phases 1 and 2 was also the same. So for Bristol and many others, I'm sure, but I can only speak on behalf of Bristol, the building safety cases will be submitted on a risk-based approach, and the risk will equate to the height of buildings, the number of people in the buildings, if there's any flammable cladding, type of cladding as well, because there's a different scale of what that might look like, and any known structural issues. That said, part of the building safety case is collecting detailed information such as structural assessments of buildings, as well as lots of other things that already happen, such as your compliance streams of work from electrical testing, gas testing if applicable, Legionella water, windows, roofs, and component life information. So the building safety is now prioritising that task and doing a risk matrix against each buildings from the information that we've collected to date. And we intend to have that completed by the end of November 2023. That will then inform how and when the the order in which we will submit and start creating and building safety cases. So these are live and living documents, and these will also need to be updated regularly with all new information as we go through. And once they've submitted to the regulator, if any changes happen, we'll need to then resubmit to the regulator. You can see then on the last slide, the building safety regulator will then invite the principally accountable person to apply for an assessment certificate for over 5 years. And once that's happened and they're able to submit for a building safety case, the boroughs will have 28 days to apply. So just to follow up on what that actually means, once you've got a building safety certificate, that doesn't mean it's the end of the road. There will still be more and more tests carried out, such as all your compliance tests on certain cycles, fire risk assessments, and as we said then, if there's any changes in the building, that data is just as critically important to make sure that those building safety cases are updated. The regulator is building its portfolio of officers to support this now. It's a new regulator that didn't exist before. They've got new powers that they haven't had before or what didn't exist. So that will give good governance in the sector and it will increase safety standards in the sector. So it's a welcome move for the sector. What that'll be is the regulator will then review these cases and there may or may not be questions based on it. There may or may not be an Ofsted style inspection thereafter, which links into some of the tenant satisfaction stuff that Leisha might be able to go on to.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Any comments to Craig at this point, or should we move on? So, Councillor Denyer.
Yeah, just a simple question. I assume that all of these checks will pick up if there's any rack concrete, so the council doesn't have to do that as a separate exercise. Just seeking verification on that.
So if people didn't hear that, it was a comment about looking for rack concrete at the same time as part of the same exercise rather than doing something separately on that topic.
Yeah, really good question. I'll start with what we do know about rack, and it's been predominantly in the in the school sector and some of the more commercial buildings. From our experience and empirical evidence of refurbishment programs to date, there hasn't been the discovery of rack on roofs and flat roofs where we've done work, which is really reassuring. However, we don't know what we don't know, and it's a big stock profile, but we do believe the risk to be very low that rack exists in the social housing part. Just to make sure that we aren't missing anything, we are commissioning a new programme of works to do surveys. And as you said, Councillor Denyer, it makes absolute sense that would coincide with not only some of these works for those building safety cases, but stock condition surveys that have also been approved as part of last year's housing investment plan.
Thank you. Nigel. You're on mute, I think.
Sam, slightly concerned about assurances to do with RAC, because we were assured right up until July 2022 that the cladding on Bristol tower blocks was safe and that appropriate tests had been done, all the investigation had been done, and it was perfectly safe and we weren't going to burn down. And then we got 3 fires. So I would like some reassurance about the thoroughness of tests on building structure, so that we are sure and we don't end up with a massive emergency program and a massive bill that's happened over cladding.
Yeah, you want to come back on that one, Craig?
Yeah,
please do.
Absolutely. So Bristol City Council has always acted on the information it has at the time, and as a result of keeping people safe, as the standards has changed and as risk aversion has changed in the industry, as well as knowledge is built, then that's some of the reasons for why the shift has happened in the cladding reasons. So Bristol has always acted upon that and made sure that we can put measures in place to keep people as safe as possible with that information at the time. The structural surveys in their nature will have to carry some demolition style intrusive survey to make sure they know what the materials are made of. So yeah, that will be followed up, but I think we should take an action to give this group some more information as part of the minutes about what that survey might look like, so you can get that assurance.
Okay, that would be helpful, I think. Ciso.
Hi, yeah, apologies for the noise in the background. Thanks for the presentation. Just wanted to check. My concern here now is the rising demand towards the council and how you are managing these potential flux of complaints. Secondly, you've got an ongoing number of projects like Project 100 in terms of the housing delivery, your housing delivery plan. And I'm not sure what's going on with the housing delivery manager for the council, if there is currently one, if there isn't, because there's a post available to hire someone. So all of these things means I'm not like, what is the capacity of the council? And great thing that you want to put across a budget increase, because if you're doing all of this, you're looking for more builders, the cost of all of that is rising. You're going to need additional staff to look after the complaints. What is the capacity of the council to actually manage all of these situations simultaneously?
Councillor Reynard, would you like to address that strategic question?
I'll take this one. So we're obviously going through a refresh of our business plan at the moment, which is looking at what we need going forwards. And one of the priority areas that we're looking at is our kind of plan programme and response repairs service, as well as all the compliance work we need to do. One of the big challenges we have is inflation as well. Inflation in construction and in repairs has actually outstripped kind of consumer price index inflation. And some of this is also tied into what is done about the rent rise or not in any given financial year, because obviously the housing revenue account has to self-fund. We do have challenges around surveyors and recruitment of surveyors, and that's again a sector-wide issue. But what we are doing is looking at we take a risk-based approach to work that we do. We have a plan programme for a reason about prioritising works in a certain order as well. And when we go through that business plan reset later this year, and we will be engaging with tenants and key tenants like yourself that are very involved as part of that process, so that we can have some of those conversations about what we do prioritise, because we can't do everything in one go. My understanding is the head of housing delivery post, which you're referring to, has been appointed to, but we can obviously circulate an update on that, because I'm not sure if it's been publicly confirmed yet. But the housing delivery team is a separate, distinct team from the team that carries out our repairs plan programme and so on. So they are a distinct team, the housing delivery team, working on distinct projects because they're focused on building housing or enabling the building of more affordable homes across the city.
Okay, so Subasise, that's okay, right? We're okay. I'm always conscious of time. So if there are any more questions for Craig, Leisha, did you want to come in with the tenant engagement part of this, and then we'll take Nigel's specific question about safety? Leisha?
Yeah, I'm going to talk just specifically about resident engagement in building safety and what our plans are around that. I appreciate there may be some people on the call today, some residents who've seen this before in other resident meetings, but it's just an update for the board so that you know what we're doing and what our plans are going ahead. So following on from Craig's presentation, so my role within building safety at the moment is to develop a resident engagement strategy specifically around building safety. It's a requirement by the building safety regulator. We need to have that in place by the 1st of April as well. The aims of the strategy is for us to target our high-rise blocks. So Craig mentioned earlier there's 62 of them. We've sort of narrowed that down to 57. The engagement plan strategy needs to set out what residents can expect from us in terms of the safety of their home, how they can access information, and how we communicate and engage with residents on an ongoing basis about the safety of their home and any planned improvement works for their block as well. It's not, you know, we have been engaging with residents over the last few years around building safety, predominantly on fire safety. So I won't dwell too much on this slide because many of you know what we've been doing to date, but we have been given regular fire safety updates to resident groups in Housing News on our website as well. We did some resident engagement with tenants in high-rise blocks about this time last year, particularly when we were putting in the wake and watch teams. We've been updating all the fire safety notices and just having an ongoing conversation with resident groups about what we're doing in terms of cladding removal, what we're doing in terms of fire safety. We now have a new building safety team in place as well. It's a dedicated team who will be responsible for making sure we're compliant on our buildings and fire safety issues. And as Craig said, we've got fire risk assessments underway across the high-rise blocks, and we're also rolling out fire safety training for caretakers and wardens in the first instance, but also putting together some mandatory training for all of our staff so that everyone's clear about our responsibilities. In terms of developing this strategy, I've got a little bit of a timeline here. So I've been doing some groundwork, just looking at what we already know in terms of building safety and in terms of what's important to residents. Throughout September, I've been going to the Housing Forum, service user groups, Housing Management Board today, just letting people know what our proposals are for engaging residents and getting their views on that. From next month, or early November at the very latest, we intend to carry out a citywide telephone survey. So many of you know that we use a survey company called Acuity to run our satisfaction survey program. That's done on a basis of telephone calls. So we've asked Acuity to help us run a resident safety survey across all of those 62 blocks to help us get some really quick information from residents about how they feel about safety in their block, whether they've got any concerns, and how they would like to be communicated with. So I've got a set of questions that we'll be asking as part of that survey. Moving forward, we are also creating a website. It's not ready yet, but we're in the process of creating a website where residents will be able to look at their block and see what safety information is there for their block. So we already have fire safety risk assessments online, but what you will be able to do is search for your individual block and see not just the fire safety risk assessment, but other key safety documents there as well. So that's in development. From November and into the new year, once we've got the telephone survey out of the way, I'll be looking to start drafting a citywide engagement strategy document and consulting on that. And we also intend to get out into local areas and talk to people through door knocking and just talking to people on their doorsteps or in the foyers of the blocks, just to see, especially where we haven't managed to hear from residents as part of the telephone survey. By March, I'd hope for us to establish a citywide building safety group or forum, in addition to the groups that we have already, hoping that that will, you know, anyone that's interested in safety issues will be able to have that dedicated space to be able to talk to us about building safety. And then by April, of course, that's the deadline, and we also want to be able to let residents know what we've done and how we've responded to their comments. So that's a rough outline of the timeline. So our aim at the moment is just to get some early engagement from residents about our approach. Is there anything in there that, you know, this board or any of the other residents groups that I've been to would like us to do as part of the engagement? And do they have any ideas about how else we can share safety information with residents, or methods of reporting concerns about safety issues? And also, you know, just asking about how we monitor and review the strategy once we get it done. I've skipped this question only because there's lots of questions there, and I think I've covered what I really want from Housing Management Board is, you know, given the outline of what we're planning to do, are there any comments from the board about, you know, our approach to building this strategy? And is anyone of the board interested in working with us to develop that?
Alicia, thanks very much. Just as a comment in the chat from Sibusiso about linking the documents to the home choice as another way of getting it to relevant potential residents. I've got Tim first, if you'd like to come in first, and then Pete, and then Christine. Tim first.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, because there's no mention of what you said, Alicia, about evacuation plans for the blocks, particularly for those that don't walk, that are normally in chairs and stuff, you know, wheelchairs. So
yeah.
What have you done for things like that?
So one of the questions in the survey, in the telephone survey, is about asking residents whether they feel they'd have difficulty evacuating from the block.
Right.
What that will allow us to do is follow up on the people that tell us that. So I'm currently sort of working behind the scenes to make sure that when people give us that information, we're able to do something with it. There's one thing to ask, but you then, once you know, you need to act on it. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of groundwork at the moment ahead of the survey.
It's very strange, really, because when I first started working in Bartnell in 2003, that first year I was there was a plan put forward, and they even went out and bought a couple of special, I don't know what you would call them, like chairs with wheels on, for actually, you know, taking people down over the stairs. And they were two different things, because I took delivery of these chairs. Now that was 2003, that was 20 years ago. So, and of course they were very expensive back in those days, because that's the way the council worked. So I just wonder what happened to that piece. There was pieces of kit. So nobody just know. Anyway.
Sorry to interrupt before you're finished. Sorry, Tim.
No, it's okay, Craig. That's all right. Just in case you might know.
I don't know what's happened to those chairs, but I do know a little bit more about PEEPs and our direction. So at its highest level, PEEPs aren't statutory yet, not part of law yet. However, there's an acknowledgement about what the organisation needs to do about keeping people safe in an evacuation. After the two significant fires last year and the resident engagement sessions that we carried out quite quickly just before Christmas, and part of the letters there was acknowledgement about that and recording people's vulnerability should they wish to put that forward. And there was links in the letters, so that information is being collected and it's being shared with Avon Fire and Rescue digitally, and obviously under all the GDPR requirements that you would need. So yeah, it would also, I think, be a benefit if we put that into the minutes so we can reshare that link. So if anyone does have those concerns, we can share that now.
I also experienced fire brigade fire engines turning up for fires in certain blocks. And they have the pass keys to get through the security, and they didn't have the keys with them. So these things that are there put in place to work sometimes don't actually happen.
I can vouch for it. They've got a big key that's shaped like an axe in an emergency.
Yeah. Well, let's hope they're more successful now than they were then. How about that? Thanks very much. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Tim. We can but hope. We've got Pete, and then I've got Christine.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Lucia. You were asking where else can we put this information. There's a part of me that would like to see it linked to Pinpoint. We have this beautiful map of the city, which we can add layers of information to, and at individual block level or individual street level, we can put the links to the website you were talking about creating, but on a block by block basis from the map, you can get a direct link from the map into the external website with that information. I would personally welcome that, and I personally welcome what Sibusiso was saying about linking to homes so that people considering moving into these blocks can have a view of the fire safety measures of the block as part of the bidding process. I think the more information we give prospective potential tenants, the greater we are likely to overcome fears or rejections of offers on the nature of high-rise buildings. I know there's been a number of recent fires. I think we were very lucky at Twinell, but it has influenced people's behaviours when they're looking at whether or not to move into particular types, sizes and locations. The more information we can give, the greater it works. I know choice-based lettings is effectively implementing a market of housing, and markets work better with greater information. So if we could link to Pinpoint, that would help. Thank you.
I'll look into that. Thank you, Pete, for that suggestion.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. Christine.
Yeah, good luck with your phone survey. As a person who has, despite signing up to telephone preference service, gets bombarded with phone calls, I routinely don't answer my phone if I don't recognise the number. So perhaps you can devise a strategy for that.
Well, as I said, Christine, the phone survey is one part of trying to reach residents. We are planning to get out into communities to talk to people as well. We realise we're not going to reach everybody. We won't reach every household, but for those that we do reach, we'll be able to collect that information early and then be able to do some more targeted engagement later on. So it's just one of the ways in which we're planning to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. So, so in terms of responses, so colleagues on the board should have your questions in their pack, Leisha. So, and I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that if something strikes them, 5 minutes after we end this meeting, you're welcome comments sort of directly by email. So this isn't their only chance to comment in that sense.
No, of course not. Yes, I will welcome comments directly by email. The survey questions themselves isn't in the pack today. We're finalising those, but I can certainly circulate them by email if anyone's interested. I've got a meeting later this week with the survey provider, so I'm also asking them about best practice in terms of the question set. So once we've got a good indication of what we're definitely asking, I can share that.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm conscious that Richard is waiting for us to move on to the HRA, but before we do that, Nigel, did you want to make your point about cladding? I think.
No, well, it's far more than that. It's to do with engagement, and it's to do with the whole broad spectrum. And the first thing I want to say is this is not just specific Gilton House problem. It is going to apply to all the tower blocks which have their cladding replaced, and it will affect thousands of tenants. I also need to say it's the subject of a formal complaint to the council in the name of 35 residents of Gilton House. I've already, although the response is not due to the 9th of October, I've already been told by senior officers that it will be rejected. So in terms of engaging with us, and also the efforts made by council officers to shut down discussion at the drop-in, I remain a bit cynical about the possibilities of engagement. The issue is that insulation and cladding has been removed from Gilton House. There have been enormous delays in the project, none of which have been adequately explained. We will be without insulation over the winter, which will enormously increase our electricity bills, which many people in this block who are pensioners won't be able to afford, and therefore are at serious risk from the effects of cold. Now, it's too late to do anything about Gilton House. It's been messed up completely. We are putting in a claim for compensation. And we'll take it as far as we can do to get that compensation for the increased to cover the increased cost of electricity and keep our homes heated over the winter. But the lessons must be learned for the others. The lessons are proper project management with proper timing and planning. So you don't get situations like we've got here now, where the new windows were due to be fitted and the cladding can't go on until the windows are on. And wow, suddenly they find that they can't fit them. There's a problem because it wasn't tested with enough time. So now the whole thing's been postponed indefinitely. Problem after problem, delay after delay. So it's a question for the council and the contractor issues to properly plan and manage these programs. And it's also a question of timing, so that residents aren't without insulation over periods of cold, or if they have to be, because there is obviously an urgency in this to do with fire safety, then they're adequately compensated so they can afford to keep their homes heated. I think this is a serious matter which affects the whole city, and not just me, but whole loads of tenants have become in Gilton House become completely cynical and disappointed about the whole process. We feel we're getting nowhere, and the interest from elected councillors has been nil. No elected councillors have been anywhere near us, have taken an interest, even though we've been banging on about this for months, and we just get fobbed off by officers. So the prospects of serious tenant engagement, if Gilton House is anywhere to go by, look a bit bleak.
Okay, thank you for that very clear intervention, Nigel. Councillor Reynard, you've got your hand up. Would you care to respond to that one?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice. I'm very happy to come down and meet with residents. I'm aware that the 2 local ward councils have been engaging because they've written to me on behalf of local residents. I think there has been some engagement on the issue of what do we do around cladding removal and the impact that's having on residents in the colder months. It's being looked at in the round, and we'll consider it as part of the business planning process. So obviously, if money is not recovered or is given out, then it's not getting spent on something else. We just have to consider all these issues in the round. I am very sympathetic to the issues and the position at Gilton House and the challenges that there have been at that block. And I think one of the things that we do need from the service is a very clear timeline, so that we have one single version of the truth of what's actually been going on at the block, because officers have shared information with me about some of the timelines and the challenges and what's been happening, so that we can make sure if there are lessons to be learned, that they are indeed learned for future cladding removal projects, because as you rightly point out, we've got quite a few to do in the coming years. But yes, the core issue of your question, it is being looked at the moment as part of the business process.
Thank you. Donald, did you want to come in at that point?
Yeah, I'm just having a few problems with my system. Nigel, so I'd need to know, who have you contacted who you believe is shutting down the debate? And secondly,
I don't want to name names in a public forum like this.
Okay, fine. Well, if you can send me, can you send me an email? You can be.
I would rather a more general notice be put out. I don't want to land anybody in trouble. I don't want to put their jobs under threat, or I just want perhaps a general message to go out. Please treat people with respect and don't try and shut down the discussion.
Well, that's certainly not.
Even though that discussion may be embarrassing, but I'm not grassing anybody up.
Okay. All right, Nigel. I'll just the issue of principle. No one in administration, particularly Councillor Renard, would want to shut down the voice of residents, however uncomfortable it is for officers. So we do need to hear and see what residents are saying. And so when I say trace back, I don't mean trace back any individual officer. I just mean the contents of your submission.
Okay.
Well, the conduct of tenant drop-ins.
No, the content of your submission,
Sorry,
not conduct.
The conduct of tenant drop-ins for July, August, and September.
Okay, thank you.
There was a very heated discussion in July when we were told that the project was going to be delayed into the autumn and winter, and since then we've been told you can only ask particular questions. We can't go into general discussion.
Well, it feels just in case anybody who joined late, I think Nigel is absolutely right to point out this meeting is not just being recorded but being live broadcast. So it would be inappropriate to go into great detail. But it does sound like there's a conversation here to be had about precisely what happened, both in terms of content and conduct, perhaps. But can we leave it there for now and ask you to pick it up in a slightly less public arena for a more detailed conversation? But I've got Ben.
Could I invite Councillor Renard to come in and talk to tenants here, along with the local councillors? I think it's necessary now. Certainly after this fiasco over the windows, it's necessary.
But very happy to, Mr. Varlin. I've done it at the block. Okay. So very happy to come down.
Okay, so that's.
By the way, I do have a first name.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't. I'm just focusing on the issue, not individuals, Nigel.
Okay. Yeah. So I've got Ben next, and then Philip.
I was just wondering, it seems to be a little bit of a theme potentially with the polystyrene and now with the insulation. And I've noticed with other projects as well sometimes that the management isn't necessarily that great, or maybe it's the contractors that aren't sort of living up to the standards the council would expect. Is there ever any feedback requested from tenants or leaseholders about the contractors? And would the council then keep track of contractors and sort of how they're performing in the tenants and leaseholders' view?
I'll jump in on that one, if that's okay. Yeah, so absolutely. It's a real key objective of mine. We're implementing that through my management team, that we're a learning organisation and we take on feedback. So part and parcel of any project over a certain value, which is actually relatively small, we always do a feedback session with representatives from residents, leaseholders, caretakers, contractors and BCC officers running the projects, because there's different experiences across all those projects and you can get some real added value in that and what that can look like by rolling over, learning into different projects. So that's a key objective. And then you've also got the legal parts of contracts where KPIs, key performance indicators, they're implemented to stop things like this from going off track, within budget, debris, cleanliness, all of those things that should be being adhered to. So yes, in short, but acknowledgement that that doesn't mean that that always happens in practice. But we're absolutely happy to be and accept legitimate scrutiny about this stuff, so we can make sure we improve on all the projects.
Okay. But I think that's just a good summation of an issue. I think I think Ben is right. It's come up a number of times. I've got Philip, and then I've got Christine, and then possibly I think we need to move on then to the next item. So Philip.
Yeah, good evening. Sorry I lost you for about 5 minutes, but that's my cappy. I've just got a new machine and it keeps kicking in, telling me I've got trackers or something. The thing is, Northfield House has just started supposedly having the cladding removed. But one concern I have is that the resident meetings with the contractors are in the afternoon. Now, not everyone in Northfield is disabled, elderly or unemployed. What about the workers? Why can't we have meetings at weekends or in the evening, so all tenants have a chance of attending and understanding what's going on? Thank you.
Okay, so there's a very practical point about modes of engagement there that I think no doubt resonate.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair enough question, Philip. And I think really to try and improve this, we need to be asking tenants what times suit them best. And obviously there'll be a variety of times to suit different groups of people at different times of the day. But the contractor should be factoring that in along with ourselves. And so the contractors and ourselves should be working together to try and identify, using our caretakers or residential or non-residential block, to find out what are the best times for people. I think if we do door-to-door knocking when major projects are underway, we can gather that kind of evidence and then build the engagement around that.
Thanks, Donald. Christine, is your question has been answered, or are you okay?
Sorry, I'm okay. It was fiddling with stuff. I didn't have a question.
No, fine. That's fine. No problem at all. Okay. I'm sure we will return to this issue. Obviously, it's a huge concern and hugely important, but I'm conscious we should probably move on now to our next item, which is the review of the HRA business plan. And Richard James has joined us. So, Richard, over to you to draw to the committee's attention what they need to know and what you'd like from us.
Thank you very much. I'll just try and share my screen first, so bear with me just for a second while I'm fiddling with the IT. And let me know if you can see that okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah.
All right, so I've just pressed it, so it should be working. Okay. Do you know if it is that on slideshow, or is it still
not on slideshow yet? It's still on edit.
There we are.
Yeah, there now.
Right. Okay. I'm here to talk about the review of the housing revenue account. So what I'm going to be going through today is sort of setting the the wider scene about what we're looking at, background position, and what the key challenges and demands will be. And we've discussed quite a few of those already in this meeting, so it is quite interesting. We're sort of joining everything up, but hopefully this will help bring some of it together, and talk to you about how we prioritize investment, and get some of your feedback and input into that, and then finally just talk through what the timeline will be for this review of the housing revenue account and that and the business planning exercise. Okay. And just to say, I'm really happy for people to put their hand up. I will probably come to questions at the end, if that's okay, unless you have something absolutely burning. But yeah, if we do questions, then that'll be brilliant. Right, so setting the scene, as you know, we have approximately 28,500 rented and leasehold homes. So the housing revenue account is a separate ring-fenced account from the rest of the council, and it's for council housing. It includes the income from tenants and leaseholders, from rents and service charges, and then everything that we need to invest in to provide services and to keep homes in good repair. Every year we need to maintain a 30-year plan of how we plan to invest money and what income we think we're going to get over that period. And so every year we will look at that and reassess it based on what we know now. Over the next 5 years, within the last plan, so last financial year, about this time last year, we put into the plan, the current plan, an amount of money. So just to give you some context, over the next 5 years, we will be investing about 865 million on capital works. So they are sort of major planned works activities, either to existing homes, about 400 million to existing homes, or building new homes, which is slightly more, on about 460 million. We're also spending about 685 million on revenue works, and revenue works are more providing day-to-day repairs, service, void works, and general safety inspections and activities, things like your gas service and stuff like that. There'll be significant changes taking place, and I'm going to come to this in a bit more detail in a slide's time, on health and safety and consumer regulation. We've touched on the health and safety during Craig's presentation earlier, but so there's a lot changing in the sector which we need to be able to respond to, and which we need to make sure we have adequate investment for over the short and longer term. And I will touch on that in a bit more detail in a slide or two's time. So just to come to challenges and demands first, just to give it a bit of context, and I know Councillor Renard did mention some of this earlier, but it has been discussed in a bit more detail. We have been impacted by higher interest rates, as is of everyone, and that has had an effect on the amount of money we have available within the plan. So giving you an idea that the inflation on rent for last year was 7%, which the government put a cap in for that, so social landlords couldn't go any higher. When materials, so for example the cladding that we're putting onto homes, the windows we're fitting, has generally gone up about 16% over that period, and labour, so people to do that work, has gone up about 9%. So there's been a bit of a squeeze, and there still is, between what money we're getting in and the cost of the services that we provide and the works that we're doing. And that is going to affect what we can do going forward, and to make sure that it's really important that we make sure that the income we get is enough to enable us to do what we'd like to do. But it does mean we'll have to prioritize things, and I'll come to that in a minute. The other sort of challenge demand is we do have a large development program, and again, that is having to meet more stringent sustainability standards, as the national position meeting net carbon zero. It means that we have to do more, which is more cost. Some more challenges, as we've spoken about already. We've got to respond to the Building Safety Act and the Fire Safety Act. We also have to respond to the Social Housing Regulation Bill, which is an upcoming legislation, which will mean we will have a regulator. So the regulator of social housing will be bringing some consumer standards into place. The government are also looking to review the Decent Home Standard, which basically guides the standard of homes that all social landlords provide. That is changing because that's quite out of date now, and that's being brought up to more modern standards, and that's work that's going on at the moment, and there's a consultation that's going to start imminently on that. We're also got to invest more in other wider statutory requirements. So we've spoken a lot about fire safety, but damp and mold is a huge issue, as I'm sure a lot of people are aware. Also, electrical standards change, and our approach to carrying out servicing programs is changing and evolving over time. Achieving EPCC, which is an environmental and energy efficiency standard for our homes. We have to get all homes up to EPCC by 2030, and then net zero carbon by 2050. And there's going to be some real challenges with some of our homes, especially our oldest homes. So we have properties in the cities of Victorian and Georgian homes, specifically, which have very, very poor insulation standards. A lot don't have insulation in the walls, so there's a lot of work to do, and they're going to be very costly to get up to the EPCC and then net zero carbon. We've also touched on this a bit earlier, but we're carrying out a very large program of stock condition surveys, which is going to start this year. That's going to be to over 20,000 homes over 2 years. But what that's going to mean is, as we inspect homes, we are going to find things that need to be done, some more work that needs to be done. So we need to be able to preempt that rather than be caught on the back foot. We need to make sure that we've got the resources and the funds in place to enable us to respond to that additional demand when it comes in. And we also need to deliver initiatives to reduce demand and cost of temporary accommodation, and that's a real issue for the council as a whole and nationally, and to consider potential regeneration opportunities. So there may be some schemes that actually have reached the end of their life and aren't providing the quality homes and accommodation that we need, and we might need to do something more substantial in that instance. Okay, how we prioritize investment. There's loads of stuff we want to invest in. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do absolutely everything. Just going back first to the big housing conversations. So there was the big consultation in 2021, which asked tenants what the priorities were, and what we were told then is the priorities were building new council housing, ensuring homes are energy efficient, and that we're fitting insulation, that there's more investment in blocks and communal areas and wider estates, and that we're replacing key components such as kitchens and bathrooms, and heating systems and windows. So in addition to those big housing conversation themes, there are other areas that we are focusing on. Ensuring tenants' homes are safe is a big focus for everyone. It's got to be the number one priority, is ensuring homes are safe, ensuring tenants are safe in their homes. Ensuring homes are free of damp and mold is also a very big priority for both tenants, but and Bristol City Council. CCTV replacement is another priority, and moving away from fossil fuels like gas, and installing more energy environmentally friendly heating systems, for example heat pumps. To be able to do that, we need to ensure those homes first have good thermal performance. They're energy efficient, because if you can't change from a gas boiler to a heat pump without that insulation, or else they'll be very expensive and very difficult to heat. So, couple of questions for the board. First one is, do you agree that these priorities are the right areas for us to invest in? And following on from that is there anything else we have missed? So before everyone jumps in and asks, I'm just going to cover the last slide, so I'm coming up to the end, which is just a timeline, and then I'll come back to those points, and I'm sure we can have a discussion. So just a timeline to give you an idea. So in September, we were developing the draft budgets and the assumptions. So the teams have been working really hard to gather all that together, so we understand what we need to do, and we started to assess those and prioritize the demands. In October and November, we're going to be, so we've put a lot of the investment in to the plan, and we're just modeling that at the moment, and then we will have a look at actually how does that look, can we afford it, do we need to do things in a certain order, do we need to prioritize? So that's that sort of testing viability, and there's the consultation, and this is part of that wider discussion with tenants, with management teams, and of course working closely with Councillor Renard. So in December, we plan to present to the Mayor's office. January, then we plan to request cabinet approval, and in February we plan to go to the full council approval. Those timelines are pretty standard what we do most years. We've started a little bit early this year because we know there's a lot of challenges out there, so we felt we needed a bit more time to understand what our base position is, to put us on a good footing, to have some difficult prioritization discussions and decisions. Okay, shall I do you want me to keep the slides up, or shall I come off the slides so we can see everyone, and then I think
come off the slides. You've got your two key questions, which is, do you agree with the right areas, and
that's it.
Is there anything else missing? Fine, yeah, I think we can keep hold of that. So I've got 5 hands up already. I just to orientate ourselves, we've got 25 minutes till we're due to finish. We've got one more item, which I think is item 6, is the start of a conversation. So I think we need to allow sort of 10 minutes for that. So let's take everybody, and obviously this isn't the only opportunity for this item. So I got Tim first, then I got Sibasu, so then I got Philip, then I got Councillor Denyer, and then I've got Ben. So Tim first.
Okay. There was no mention of district heating. I'd also like to think that you're looking at that.
Yes.
Good. And if necessary, developing it further, you know, into the city and into the areas like the south of the city where I live. It's a more cost-effective way of creating heat for housing instead of doing expensive, you know, this other types of heating that's around. The other thing I wanted to very quickly ask, and I probably know the answer, is that do you actually still have like a, not necessarily a development team, but somebody who's responsible for like new technology and stuff? Because I'm thinking about wind generation of electricity and things like that.
Yes, yeah, we do. Well, we have various teams, but we do have specific teams whose responsibility is to look out and see what's going on in the wider sector, make sure we're gathering good practice.
Sure, I understand. Sorry, Richard, I know what that is. I mean, you're looking at other councils, in other words, so I understand that. But I'm stupid enough to sort of think that there is still somebody that's looking at new technology regarding, I mean, you know, a few years ago, the council used to fit PV solar panels on roofs and stuff. I know that's no longer done because of obviously cost, but wind generation is a far better way of creating power than the solar panels. We don't get the sun here, but we get a lot of wind. So you know, I mean, stupid things like that. And I don't see the council sort of saying, no, yeah, we're looking at this as well. I don't see any of that.
Yeah, no, we certainly are. We've got a team which is led by Sam Robinson, and he's our renewables energy manager. So he is looking at new technology, and actually solar panels, we are looking at that is certainly in the mix to fit solar panels to our homes. It's certainly in the investment plan that we are looking at the moment, but that's not to the detriment of other technologies. Sam very much is developing the our energy efficiency strategy, and looking at a range of technologies that will help us to support our goals.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. So just on that point, I might invite outside this meeting, Jeremy, because so the issue of technologies that haven't happened is something we've covered previously. So I remember Pete Dorr was forcefully made some points about previous plans that might be worth sharing again. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the four, so that you get your pen out, Richard. So I'm going to take the 4 comments from the hands that are up, just so that you know what the issues are, and then we'll see where we are. So Sibasise first, just and then Philip. So the issue that you'd like to raise, and I think if we can capture what they are during the meeting, that would be helpful.
Sure. I think, again, in terms of that project management piece, there's quite a lot going on, and the impact that this will already have on the council's already stretched budget and deficit. So I'm interested in actually seeing a map of the areas that the renovation projects that's already been allocated. Which areas are those? Interested in seeing then where there's future developments. Basically, I think my point is here, there's a lot of writing, and it'd be great to get some visual into what work is being done where and how, so we can actually start to see if there's levels of where the gaps are and address levels of inequality within some of the housing stock equally. Because the way that it is with all this writing, and you're doing block here, then you need to look at the postcode. We as volunteers on this board don't have the same capacity as you. So in order to really understand everything and go through everything, we take additional time from our family, from our work and everything, which I think is a bit unfair. But if they made the information a lot more clearer to us, simplified, then at least then it's much better. I'm not saying scrutinize, but better understand the wider impact that you're trying to be help and be more on your side. And we're not asking tough questions just because it's just some information that we don't see, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's huge areas that what you've proposed can help with, and especially if you're raising the concern about inflation now, then finding the next administration or the committee system find itself in a big hole. So it's a great opportunity, but it's just not clear. And I say this because the housing delivery manager, from what I've seen, is now working for Gorham Homes, which I could be like, how does that work, right? And then there was some articles saying that there was £39 million loss or equated for within the housing delivery side. And then the housing board has not met for a year and a half, and you're only going to meet in November because you have to talk about money that needs to be increased. So some things just don't feel comfortable at this point in time with the information that's required, although it's got the public benefit to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can I take a range of comments? I'm just very conscious of our time. So because I think there's some very important points there raised, which we've captured for the minutes. I think maybe we just need to see how far much. So Philip, a brief intervention from yourself, please, and then it'll be Councillor Denyer. You're on mute, Philip. Philip, you're on mute. Philip.
Phil, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Philip.
Hello?
Now we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that. As I say, I've had anaesthetic today, so I've been on day surgery, so I'm a bit hazy. But has anyone asked questions on feedback about these windows that are fitted? Because I was talking on Monday to people in Gaywood House who've just had new cladding. They had this brick cladding, which is now going to be ripped out, and they had new windows, which are called I can't remember what they're called anyway. Something 21. They are absolute rubbish. From here, sat here at 14 foot across my living room and 80 foot from the road, I can hear a bus pass. Now, this double glazing is rubbish, and I've said it before at this meeting, and I'll say it again. It's absolute rubbish. The council, we had a surveyor come, and he said these windows are not external windows. They're for like internal corridors for schools. There's a 4mm gap between the window that opens and the mullion. And if you don't know what a mullion is, look up. But the other thing I was going to say is regarding alternative heating, as far as I'm aware, and I've spoke to the warden about this, who's full-time, Tina, no one has been to St. Catherine's Court, where they have heat exchangers on 30 flats. Each flat has its own heat exchange. They've been there 20 years. They're brilliant. The residents think they're wonderful. Has no one been and seen that? I've spoke to Leap for what good it was, and they didn't even know where St. Catherine's Court was. So, it's all right giving this great big presentation, and all power to you, you've done it well. But the answer to your question is here. But you don't know it because you've changed hands so often and so many people move around. It's like a game of chess. People are moving around the board. Thank you.
Philip, thank you. You made your point clearly, I believe. So I'm sure we'll just capture that. Councillor Denyer, I think there's some couple of things you wanted to raise.
Thank you. Yes, I'm off the bus now. Two things. One, on that report specifically, it says that you're only aiming to get to EPCC by 2030 and only aiming to be net zero carbon by 2050. That's not in line with Bristol City Council's own policies. So I wondered what's going on with that. It was a bit disappointing to see that you're only aiming to get to net zero carbon by the latest possible date that the Conservative government has set for the entire country, when Bristol set its date for 20 years earlier than that. I know that's a really ambitious target, but also it was set in 2018. So, there has been some time. And even if you don't think that's possible, 2050 is a long way ahead. I I also had a point about maintenance, which I held my tongue on earlier agenda items when other people were bringing up maintenance issues, because I believed I was going to get a chance to raise it later. But I do need to leave promptly at 8, so I'm just going to insert it quickly now, even though it probably really belongs under agenda item 7 about the annual report to tenants and maintenance, which is Cibasiso raised the specific issue about tenants being left without adequate laundry facilities since August. I also met with some tenants that were affected by that, and also heard about some really long running maintenance issues with one whole side of a building getting water ingress and serious damp issues for a very long period of time with no action. So rather than asking you to take an action on a specific building, I just want to register this general point that in terms of maintenance and tenant satisfaction, the message I actually get from tenants that I meet is not nearly as positive as what we see in the reports quite often. And I'm really getting a strong message that some maintenance issues are being left to run on for months and years, and tenants don't feel like, according to the council computer system, it's often registered as fixed, but it's not actually fixed in the real world. And I just wanted to register that as an issue.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very helpful. So I see Richard's captured. Ben, you're next. An intervention on this point?
Yes, I'll keep it brief. I think mine actually pulls into a lot of themes that have already been mentioned, but I think that there's clearly an overarching plan and sort of a 30-year plan, and which is great. But I think in reality, what often happens is that the repairs or maintenance or things that are done are not done with the long-term plan in mind. And so a drain needs unblocking, they shove a rod down it and say it's fixed and walk away, rather than putting a camera down, seeing what's actually happened and fixing the root issue. So what is the plan to gain oversight from that broader plan, that 30-year plan, over the maintenance that's actually done, and make sure that that is done within budgets and done properly, so that you can spend that 800 million or whatever it was to the sort of biggest effect.
Okay, thank you. Pete Dorr, brief intervention from yourself.
Yeah, I have to declare an interest, because obviously last millennia I supported Nicky Devage in the authorship of the original 30-year business plan for the cheapest housing with the Urban Housing Task Force, as then was. I think we still lack ambition when we write these documents. I'm a big fan of Kate Raworth at economics. The idea that if we take the 9 planetary constraints and we take the UN Sustainability Development Goals, we can often find outputs of one industry or one function that are actually the inputs for another. And I would ask, for example, the data center of the city council, are we actually using the heat from it to heat our swimming pools? Simple things like that have been done elsewhere in the country, we're not doing. Glass, simple see-through glass, generate electricity. It doesn't have to be on a rooftop. The underline, the underground park in New York proved we can pipe using just a cable. We can pipe light from different locations. We can light hallways and fire exits without needing electricity. I never see such innovations in the housing revenue account. I see ghastly things like these carpet baggers from the housing festival telling us that we should repeat the mistake of Ronan Point and build shoddy housing. I don't see actual joined up thinking that hits, as Councillor Danielle points out, our 2030 ambition. So I'm going to make the offer. If you want to contact me and talk with me outside of the meeting, Richard, I'm a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Housing. I'm a postgraduate economist, and I would really welcome a dialogue outside of the meeting, because I don't think the aspirations have been set high enough. I don't think the deadlines have been set early enough to actually match the greening that we need to do over the next 30 years, given the constraints of resource and finance that will imply during these 3 decades. Please contact me.
Okay, thank you. So there's a whole range of comments there around, well, there's a whole range of comments there. I mean, your specific question about priorities and have we missed anything out? Well, there's a number of things there about things you either clarifying or missing out. I mean, the priorities point, maybe we might ask colleagues to reflect on and maybe feed in further thoughts if they have them about that specific issue. But I'm going to let Councillor Reynard, if you like, respond at this point, and then maybe we need to move on for the last 10 minutes, if that's okay. Richard, is that okay?
That's absolutely fine. I feel we have got priorities out of those discussions anyway on a number of them. So yes,
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reynard.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for your comments. There's just a few things I'll quickly pull out, and just respond to Councillor Denyer first. Just on the net zero by 2050, that's not something I recognise, because the version of the presentation I saw didn't have that date in there, that 2050 date, and so I will pick that up with the team afterwards, because that's, as I say, not something I recognise or had signed off. So the plan is to go much faster and much sooner, and there is a social housing decarbonisation strategy being developed that will set out timelines and detail, but also what's needed to get there, because obviously there are huge challenges around net zero decarbonisation of housing stock, because we don't have the funding nor the workforce. It would cost in the money that we looked at in January 2022, 540 million, and probably a lot more now, to decarbonise all of our housing stock. So it's a huge task, and I think there's a broader point around the balance between funding for maintenance, repairs, plan, programme, and everything else. The HRA obviously had its rents frozen and reduced in real terms for 4 years between 2016 and 2020, and all those things have an impact in our ability to meet all of the needs of our aging stock portfolio. So I think there's just a bit of assurance there, hopefully, on the first point. And I think, you know, it's important that tenants do continue to raise concerns over repairs through whatever route they feel that they're able to get an answer, if they're not getting the answer that they need through the formal process. And we always welcome feedback from ward councillors as well in that regard. Pete, very happy to chat with you and just look at that. I think we want to be as ambitious as possible within the 30-year plan. I've recently met along with people from HRAs across the country with the Minister to talk about the financial sustainability of housing revenue accounts, because the sort of increasing regulations, which are all the right thing to do pose challenges for financial sustainability, and we have to make sure that we think about that and make sure that the funding support's there for some of the things that we do need to get done. But, you know, we'll take all this really helpful feedback away and really give it some thought, and then have some follow-up sessions. And just to respond to one other point around visual mapping, I don't think we have anything like that for our maintenance plan programme side, but we certainly do for affordable housing delivery. So one of the actions I'll follow up on after the meeting is to send that link round. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Maynard. So I'm very conscious that we've got a very few minutes left, and we've got 2 items that Leisha is leading on. So, but I think both of them are starts to start conversations, if I'm right. But Leisha, please, should we move on to item 6, which is about ourselves?
Yeah. So in a very short space of time, I'll just open the conversation, and I'll invite members to speak to submit comments to me outside of the meeting as well. So we are conducting a review of the Housing Management Board. There are several reasons for that review. One of the reasons is that back in 2022, we did a smart review of our tenant participation structure and methods with TPAS, the Tenant Participation Advisory Service. And they made some recommendations about how we might strengthen the role of the Housing Management Board. So part of the review is to respond to those recommendations and see how we can strengthen that. That also supports where we are in terms of the increased regulation that we're going to be seeing going forward. So the social housing regulator have put forward some proposed new standards about how we engage with residents, and more importantly, how we show the impact of resident engagement. So part of the review is also about strengthening the role of the board, but also being really clear about what the impact of the board is as we go forward as well. Another reason was around making sure that the board is a bit more representative, and at the moment the board is currently operating outside of the terms of reference. Since the pandemic, we've got a number of very committed board members here who have volunteered through coming through various resident groups to come and sit on the board, and that's continued over the past year without any review. So we just need to take a stock check on where we are and take a look at how we reinvigorate the board and put in place some proper recruitment, proper impact in terms of the board's role going forward. And of course, we're moving to a new committee system as a council as well. One of the things, there are 3 options for reviewing the board that we put forward. Those predominantly centre around how we can improve the recruitment to the board and how we can improve representation. I don't think we'll have time to go through all of the options today, but what I'd like to do, if that's okay, is just touch on option A is about recruiting resident representatives from the lower bodies within the tenant participation structure, so service user groups, housing forum, etc. Option B is about doing a citywide recruitment and selection process, so open it up right across the city in terms of getting board membership as we go forward. And option C is a combination of both, perhaps. The other proposal that we're putting forward is some changes to the terms of reference for the group, and also a proposal to co-opt local organisations who work with residents on a regular basis. That might help us to address some of the underrepresentation at the board. So a good example might be where you've got local organisations who are regularly supporting residents on housing issues. If they are dealing with their client base, which we know are underrepresented either at this board or in the rest of the participation structure, that we invite them to be co-opted onto the board. So I'm just going to ask if anyone's got any initial comments on the proposals, if you've read what those are, and then invite members to write to me afterwards or email me afterwards with any further comments they have.
Because there's a lot of information to digest in terms of the terms of reference and the various options. So yes, so an option to reflect and respond. But I've got Councillor Denyer and then Nigel, and then Phil, Pete, but we might have time. So Councillor Denyer, then Nigel.
Thank you. I'm not going to comment on which of the options, because I think that's something that should be primarily decided by the tenant and leaseholder representatives, except to say that I really agree with the idea of co-opting groups that already work with clients on housing issues. I had a meeting with Bristol Horn Youth Concern the other day, and they are exactly an example of the kind of organisation that you might want to consider co-opting. So I think that's a good idea. You mentioned just there, Alicia, that we'll be switching from the mayor and cabinet system to the committee system after the local elections in May. But actually, I wanted to flag that the draft terms of reference included still assumes a mayor and cabinet system. So I don't have time to actually draft some alternative wording, apologies, but just to flag that.
Yeah.
And it's not just a typographical point, it might actually have a material impact on the substance of the terms of reference and how it works, as well as the wording used.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So make sure the whole architecture is aligned. Nigel and then Pete. Nigel?
John, with this is it's dreadfully top down, which is, I think, the central problem of tenant participation in Bristol. Officers tell us how it's going to be. I've said this in another forum, but I think we need a working party which is balanced between officers and tenants to thoroughly review not just the management board, but the entire tenant participation structure, to localize it and democratize it, rather than just have to comment or amend something that's passed down to us. But we must move away from this top-down structure of tenant participation. It isn't working. And you can see by the very narrow number of tenants who are involved in this that it's not working.
Thanks for that intervention. That's pretty fundamental, so we'll capture that one and keep hold of it. Pete, and then Ben.
So I'm going to declare an interest here because obviously I've been involved in the tenant participation structures of Bristol and local governments, and even writing the West of England housing market strategy 29 years now. And, you know, I do feel somewhat stale, pale and male as I say that. We may be getting rid of the elected mayor, but we still have the youth mayors, and I've always wanted to have them on the board. I've always wondered whether we could do more with ACORN, the Association of Community Organs for Reform Now. I've always wondered whether we could do more with Shelter or with Citizens Advice Bureau, and especially the two students' unions whose members make up 10% of the city. So those are some of the stakeholder communities that I would like to give a voice to, drawing upon my 29 years of experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. And I'll take a last comment for now from Ben.
Yeah, just quickly, I was just wondering whether you could combine the proposals and essentially have, like for leaseholders and tenants, have a little group of people who represented together, and therefore they sent one or two members to these meetings. And therefore you remove the loss of skills every time that someone leaves, and that 3-year sort of structure you can maybe be more consistent with.
Okay, so there's some practical suggestions there. There's some fairly profound questioning of the approach there, and a range of things to consider. But as I say, that's the first. Yeah, there's an open invitation. I think not everybody's had a chance to fully digest what was there, and I think comments on the detail of that, but also comments on the principle, I think need to be made of the type that Nigel made. If you moved to make more profound suggestions, because I think that needs to be. I think the colleagues charged with reflecting on how best to go forward and put in place an effective system, you know, need to have those comments to hand. What's the time scale, Alicia, after this meeting for you receiving thoughts from colleagues?
Let me just check the timeline that I have. I think the timescale really from this meeting, if people could let us know within the next few weeks, so that on this side of Christmas, really, we've got some commentary from the board about the proposals that we can work with. Okay.
Should we say let's say should we say end of November perhaps, so that it can be digested before Christmas? That gives people 2 months pretty much, doesn't it, to digest? But I think you can get hold of it and process it then before Christmas and start the new year.
Is your email on the documentation? I'm just looking for it.
No, but I'll send it around, Nigel.
Okay.
So bear with, we're a few minutes over, so let's just draw things to close. Alicia, is there anything that you absolutely need to raise about annual reports to tenants to this meeting today?
Only to say that the annual report to tenants is now available online. It's for the year 2022 to 23. It outlines all of our performance, including tenant satisfaction, and it's available for all residents to see. I'll put a link in with the minutes, so I'll ask Jeremy to put a link in with the minutes to that. And just to, I don't know if Councillor Denyer is still on the call.
No, she's had to leave.
No, she's had to leave. But I think there's something in what she said about, you know, we're getting resident satisfaction comments in that perhaps don't necessarily reflect lived experiences. And so just sort of drawing back on what I said earlier about engaging residents more about safety and their safety concerns in their block. So hopefully we will be able to pick some of that up when we do that wider resident engagement and sort of look at all the insight we get from both satisfaction surveys, but also that engagement as well.
Okay, thank you. So that leaves us with any other business. Has anybody got any other business that they would like to raise before we draw the meeting to a close? I'm looking around the screen. Anybody, hands up, anybody who wants to raise anything? Okay. No. in that case, I'll draw the meeting to a close. Well, thanks everybody for the presentations, and thanks for the questions and the contributions. I think the board is engaged with the materials today, and there's plenty to take away and reflect upon. And I think we've flagged up some things maybe that colleagues on the officer side weren't aware of, and there's a bunch of things there to reflect on and see how they might be integrated with current plans. So thanks everybody.
Just one final thing before we
Jeremy,
end. Just wanted to check in terms of the date of the next meeting. Alicia, do you want to do anything in relation to that, or is that something you'll deal with outside?
I will send an email proposing a date for the next meeting. It will be in February, I think towards the end of February. So I'll send that round by email.
So we'll have one more meeting before the new overarching structure changes under our current constitution. Okay, so thanks everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Have fun in the meantime. See you in February.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. We're still running at the moment, so I'll just ask Tom to we just let everyone leave and then finish the broadcast. Okay, Alex, did you want to, I think we are still streaming at the moment, so did you want to discuss something here before you leave, or?
Yeah.
Tom, are you there?
I am. Is this still recording?
Sorry, Tom. Yeah, Tom. Yeah, sorry, Tom Gray. I was trying to get hold of. Sorry, Tom Gray. Are you there? Doesn't sound as though he is.
How do we know if we're not recording or we are recording?
Well, I think it is still recording. So just hang on a second. See if I can get hold of him. Just a sec. Well, I've sent him a message. Not sure what else I can actually do about this. Sorry, apologies for this. I thought he would be around because he knows roughly when this meeting's finished. So I'm not quite sure why. Can I suggest that we finish? I shut this meeting down, right? And if you want to do something, we fix it up differently. Do you want me to set up a separate Zoom meeting? Will that help, or you can contact them separately? How do you want to do it?
Don't worry, I'll follow up on email tomorrow. But all I was going to suggest is it might be useful to have just a quick discussion, Alex and Nisha, just around potentially setting up a sub group or like a task and finish group of the board to get involved in the tenant participation work. That sounds like it might be a good thing to do. So if we pick that up offline.
Right.
All right, we'll do that.
Okay.
All right. Thanks,
yeah, there were a
Tom.
few things I was going to raise, but yeah, well, I'm not quite sure I would do it. Maybe I need to. Yeah, we need to catch up.
Okay, I'll touch base with you tomorrow, Alex, and we can.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. I'm
Thank
teaching
you.
I'm teaching in the morning until 12, so it'd have to be some point. So
In the
afternoon, later on in the afternoon, probably. Okay.
Yeah. No worries. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
I'll just shut the meeting down.